Good evening, night owls, and welcome to Whisper Crowley. Tonight, I will guide you into a world of darkness, hoping to help you relax and unwind. Perhaps some of you will even drift into a haunting yet soothing sleep. Before we begin, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. And now we begin. Have you ever wondered how one moment can change everything? The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken dread. I stood in the dimly lit backroom of a courier service, my hands fidgeting with a crumpled delivery slip. The fluorescent lights flickered above me, casting long shadows that danced like phantoms across the wall. I could feel a strange weight in the atmosphere, a tension that pulled at my gut. My name is Alex. I'm just an ordinary courier, or at least I thought I was. My days usually consisted of routine deliveries, packages, documents, the occasional mysterious envelope. But tonight, something felt different. I looked around the room, taking in the shelves stacked with forgotten parcels. There was an unsettling stillness, interrupted only by the occasional hum of machinery. The air was thick, carrying an odd scent, a mix of dust and something acrid that made my skin crawl. "Alex, you in there?" my boss's voice called from the front. "Got a special delivery for you." I felt a shiver run down my spine. Special deliveries were rarely good news. With a resigned sigh, I stepped out into the main area, the cool air of the room hitting me like a wave. My boss, a grizzled man with weary eyes, stood by the counter, holding a small black package. "It's for a client I've never heard of," he said, his brow furrowed. "Deliver it tonight. No questions asked." I nodded, trying to suppress the unease rising within me. "What's in it?" He shrugged, avoiding my gaze. "Doesn't matter. Just get it there." The package felt oddly heavy in my hands, its surface smooth and unmarked. I took a deep breath, pushing down the instinctive alarm bells ringing in my head. I'd done deliveries like this before, but this one felt different, as if it carried a weight far beyond its physical form. As I stepped outside, the night air hit me with a chill. The streetlights flickered, casting an eerie glow on the asphalt. I glanced around, the familiar streets suddenly feeling foreign. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the distant hum of traffic. I hopped onto my bike, the familiar motion easing some of my anxiety. But as I pedaled through the empty streets, an unsettling sensation crept over me, a feeling that I was being watched. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see someone lurking in the shadows, but the street was deserted. Pushing the thought aside, I focused on the road ahead, trying to shake the unease. But as I rode, the feeling only intensified. My heart raced as I turned down an alleyway, the darkness wrapping around me like a cloak. Suddenly a noise pierced the silence, a soft scuffle, like footsteps echoing behind me. I paused, my breath hitching in my throat. "Hello," I called, my voice shaky. The alley seemed to stretch infinitely, the shadows flickering at the corners of my vision. There was no response, only the faint sound of my own heartbeat drumming in my ears. I shook my head, trying to dismiss my fears. "Get a grip, Alex," I muttered to myself. "It's just your imagination." I continued down the alley, the narrow passage feeling suffocating. The walls seemed to close in, and I could swear the shadows moved. I quickened my pace, glancing back again. Nothing. just the darkness, deep and unyielding. As I reached the end of the alley, I emerged onto a busier street. The sounds of the city surrounded me, pulling me from the grip of fear. I took a moment to breathe, trying to steady my racing heart. Then I spotted the address on the delivery slip. It was a dilapidated building, its windows shattered and walls covered in graffiti. A chill ran down my spine as I approached, the atmosphere thickening with an unshakable sense of foreboding. I knocked on the door, my knuckles rapping against the rotting wood. A moment passed, and then I heard a shuffling sound from inside. My heart pounded louder, the anxiety clawing at my throat. The door creaked open, revealing a figure cloaked in darkness. "Who are you?" a voice rasped, barely above a whisper. I have a delivery," I stammered, holding out the package. The figure hesitated, then stepped closer, eyes glinting with a mixture of curiosity and something darker. "Come in." I felt a strange compulsion to obey. As I stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind me, plunging me into darkness. The interior was dimly lit, filled with shadows that twisted and turned like living entities. I felt the weight of unseen eyes upon me, and an unsettling dread settled in my stomach. "What's in the package?" the figure asked, leaning closer. "I don't know," I replied, my voice trembling. "I was just told to deliver it." The figure's lips curled into a smirk. "Oh, you'll find out soon enough." The atmosphere shifted, an electric charge hanging in the air. I could feel something ancient and malevolent lurking just beneath the surface. I backed away, but the walls seemed to close in, trapping me in a web of fear. Before I could react, the figure reached for the package, their fingers brushing against mine. A jolt of energy shot through me, a surge of panic as I realized the package wasn't just a delivery, it was a key to something far darker. Suddenly the lights flickered and I heard a distant sound, a low growl that echoed through the room, sending a chill down my spine. "What was that?" I gasped, fear flooding my senses. The figure's expression shifted, a flicker of concern crossing their face. "We need to hurry. It's coming." I turned to flee, my instincts kicking in, but the room felt alive, shifting and warping as shadows closed in around me. The growl grew louder, more menacing, drowning out my thoughts. "Run!" I yelled, my voice raw with fear. I bolted toward the door, but it felt miles away, the air thickening with every step. The shadows reached for me, grasping at my ankles as I stumbled forward. I burst through the door, gasping for breath, but the night was no safer. The darkness outside was heavy and suffocating, the growl still echoing behind me, growing nearer. I took off running, heart racing as I glanced back. The figure stood in the doorway, a sinister smile on their face, shadows swirling around them. "You can't escape what's already within you." I felt a surge of panic. The words echoed in my mind as I ran, each step feeling like a desperate grasp for safety. But the night was only beginning, and the darkness had no intention of letting me go. The night air felt electric as I sprinted away from the building, my heart pounding like a war drum in my chest. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see the figure chasing after me, their malevolent grin etched into my memory. But the street was empty, save for the flickering streetlights that illuminated the darkness in erratic bursts. My breath came in ragged gasps as I turned down another alley, the familiar streets of my city now transformed into a labyrinth of shadows and fear. Every rustle of leaves, every distant sound seemed amplified, echoing in my mind like a warning. The growl still reverberated within me, a haunting reminder of what I had just escaped. I pressed my back against the cool, damp wall of a nearby building, trying to catch my breath and quell the panic that threatened to consume me. My hands trembled as I wiped sweat from my brow, the taste of fear bitter on my tongue. The package, I still clutched it tightly, as if it were a lifeline in a sea of chaos. But now it felt like a curse, something dark and insidious. What was in that package? I couldn't shake the feeling that it was more than just an item to deliver. The figure's words echoed in my mind, twisting like a knife. You can't escape what's already within you. I shook my head, trying to dispel the unease that clung to me like a shadow. Just then a noise shattered the stillness, a soft scuffling sound followed by a low, guttural growl. My heart dropped into my stomach. It was closer now, prowling through the night like a predator stalking its prey. I had to move. I couldn't stay here. Panic surged through me as I pushed off the wall and darted into the next street, my mind racing. I needed a plan. I needed somewhere safe. But the streets felt more like a prison than a refuge. The comforting glow of streetlights no longer felt like a safety net. They were merely spots of brightness in a vast sea of encroaching darkness. I spotted a small convenience store up ahead. The flickering neon sign cast an eerie glow, and I rushed toward it, desperation fueling my speed. As I burst through the glass door, a bell jingled overhead, and I staggered into the cramped space, eyes wide. The store was dimly lit, shelves stocked with snacks and drinks casting elongated shadows across the floor. I quickly glanced around, looking for anyone who could help me. Behind the counter, an elderly clerk looked up from a newspaper, his expression a mix of confusion and concern. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice gruff but surprisingly gentle. "I need to hide," I blurted, my breath coming in heaves. "Something's after me." The clerk's brow furrowed, and he set the paper aside. "What do you mean? What's going on?" I didn't have time to explain. I could feel the growl echoing in my bones, a primal warning that danger was closing in. "Just please help me." He hesitated but nodded, moving aside to reveal a door at the back of the store. "Go through there. It leads to the stock room. You can wait there until..." Before he could finish, a loud crash echoed from outside, shattering the fragile calm. The door of the store swung open violently, rattling on its hinges. I felt my heart stop as a figure stood silhouetted in the doorway, the dim light outlining its form. It was the figure from the alley, its hooded face obscured in shadow, but I could sense the malice radiating from it. "You can't hide from me," it said, voice smooth and taunting. Now I shouted to the clerk, and I dashed through the stockroom door, slamming it shut behind me. The heavy sound of my heart pounding in my ears drowned out everything else as I pressed my back against the wall, trying to steady my breathing. The stockroom was cramped, filled with boxes and pallets stacked high, creating a maze of obstacles. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting strange shadows that danced and twisted in the corners of my vision. I took a moment to gather my thoughts, my mind racing to process everything that had just happened. What did the figure want? Why was it pursuing me? I felt a rush of confusion and fear. My thoughts spiraled as I crouched behind a stack of boxes, trying to make myself as small as possible. I needed to think. The growl outside was closer now, a low rumble that resonated in my chest. I could hear footsteps approaching, slow and deliberate, punctuated by the sound of something scraping against the floor. My heart raced as the realization dawned on me. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't just a figment of my imagination. I clutched the package tightly, feeling the weight of it in my hands. I had to find a way out, but how? I glanced around the stockroom, searching for an exit. The back wall was solid, but there had to be a way to escape this nightmare. Suddenly the door rattled, and I held my breath as the figure's shadow fell over the entrance. "You can't hide forever," it called, the voice dripping with malice. "You're part of this now." I squeezed my eyes shut, heart pounding in my ears. "What do you want from me?" I whispered, but the words felt futile, lost in the chaos of my mind. In that moment of despair, I remembered the old stories I had heard, tales of curses and bargains sealed in shadows. Was that what this was? A game I had unwittingly become a part of. The figure stepped into the stockroom, the shadows dancing around it like dark tendrils. I couldn't wait any longer. I needed to act. I glanced around, spotting a heavy metal pipe among the clutter. Grabbing it, I gripped it tightly, my palms sweating. I took a deep breath and prepared myself. I had to confront whatever was after me, or I would be trapped in this darkness forever. "Come out," I shouted, forcing my voice to remain steady, even as fear coursed through me. "What do you want?" The figure paused, a hint of surprise breaking through its confidence. "You're braver than I thought," it replied, stepping further into the room. "But bravery won't save you." With a sudden rush, I lunged forward, swinging the metal pipe with all my strength. The figure dodged, moving with an unnatural grace. I stumbled but quickly regained my footing, adrenaline surging through me. "You can't escape," it hissed, and I could feel its presence closing in, dark and suffocating. In that moment, I realized I wasn't just fighting for my life. I was fighting against something ancient, something that thrived in the darkness. I needed to break free from its hold. I turned and ran, weaving between the stacks of boxes. The figure followed, its growls echoing like thunder in my ears. I could feel its breath on my neck, hot and menacing. Then I spotted a narrow exit at the far end of the stockroom, a small door leading to the alley behind the store. I raced toward it, desperation fueling my speed. I could hear the figure closing in, its footsteps pounding behind me. As I reached the door, I pushed it open with all my strength and burst into the cool night air. I didn't look back. I ran, heart pounding, every instinct screaming for me to escape. The darkness enveloped me, but I knew I had to keep moving. The weight of the package felt heavier than ever, a constant reminder of the danger I was in. I had to figure out what it all meant and how to break free from this nightmare before it consumed me whole. I bolted into the night, the cool air slicing through the heat of my panic. My heart raced as I navigated the winding alleys, desperate to put distance between myself and the entity that hunted me. Each footstep echoed ominously, reverberating against the brick walls, amplifying my dread. The streets, once familiar, now felt like a labyrinth of shadows, the darkness clinging to me like a second skin. The weight of the package in my hands felt oppressive, an anchor in this sea of chaos. I had to understand what I was carrying, what it meant, and why it had drawn such dark attention. I turned sharply into another alley, glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see the figure materialize from the shadows. The fear gnawed at me. It was a gnawing, persistent thing, growing roots in my mind. I could still hear that low growl echoing, almost taunting me, reminding me that I was never truly alone. The alley led to a dead end, a high brick wall rising before me, littered with graffiti and broken bottles. I slammed my back against the wall, chest heaving as I struggled to catch my breath. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. I sank to the ground, the cold asphalt biting into my skin, and opened the package, driven by an urgent need to uncover its secrets. The flap opened easily, revealing a small, ornate box, intricately carved with symbols that looked both ancient and arcane. My fingers trembled as I lifted the box, feeling an inexplicable warmth radiating from it, contrasting sharply with the chill of the night. "What are you?" I whispered, half to myself. I glanced around, the shadows seeming to lean closer, eager to hear my thoughts. The growl had faded into the background, replaced by an eerie silence, thick and heavy. Carefully, I unlatched the box. The hinges creaked ominously, and as I lifted the lid, a soft light spilled out, illuminating my face. Inside lay a collection of items, a silver pendant shaped like an eye, a small vial of dark liquid, and a worn piece of parchment, its edges frayed and yellowed with age. I picked up the pendant, feeling its cool surface against my palm. It seemed to pulse with energy, resonating with something deep within me. I quickly placed it back in the box, glancing around nervously. What if the figure returned? What if it had already tracked me down? Next, I reached for the vial, uncorking it carefully. A sharp, acrid scent filled the air, making my stomach churn. I recoiled instinctively, but curiosity pushed me to examine it further. "What is this?" I murmured, recalling old tales of potions and curses, dark magic hidden in mundane objects. Finally, I unfolded the parchment, the crinkling sound cutting through the silence. Scribbled in hasty script were words I could barely decipher, interspersed with strange symbols. "The eye sees all, the blood binds us." My pulse quickened as I read the last part, "You are marked." The words echoed in my mind, sending shivers down my spine. I felt the world around me shift, the shadows flickering like flames as dread settled heavily in my gut. What had I gotten myself into? Suddenly, a noise shattered the stillness. A low growl reverberated from the alley, followed by a series of footsteps. I froze, heart racing, as I realized my time was running out. I had to get out of there. I quickly closed the box and tucked it under my arm, rising to my feet. The shadows danced around me, but I couldn't afford to be paralyzed by fear. I turned to the wall, searching for a way over. I spotted a cluster of crates stacked nearby, their surfaces weathered and rough. With a surge of determination, I climbed onto the crates, my breath quickening as I reached the top. I could hear the growling getting closer, the footfalls echoing ominously in the narrow passage. I knew I had to move fast. I scrambled onto the wall, my fingers grasping for purchase as I pulled myself up. The bricks felt jagged against my palms, scraping the skin, but I didn't care. I could hear it now, the figure's voice taunting me from below. "You can't escape your fate." As I hoisted myself over the edge, I dropped down onto the other side with a soft thud, landing in a narrow alleyway that felt hidden from the world. The moment I hit the ground, I took off running, my heart pounding louder than ever. The streets ahead were empty, illuminated by the flickering light of distant lamps. I darted between buildings, weaving through the shadows, every instinct screaming at me to keep moving. I could still feel the weight of the box pressed against my side, as if it were alive, a ticking clock counting down to something inevitable. The city felt alive around me. Each shadow seemed to have a voice, whispering secrets and threats, the air thick with tension. I turned a corner and stumbled upon an old park, overgrown and neglected, the moonlight barely piercing through the canopy of trees. It was quiet here, the rustling leaves and the distant sound of water creating an eerie symphony. I ducked behind a tree, breathing heavily as I tried to compose myself. I could still hear the growling, but it seemed distant now, muffled by the trees. My thoughts spiraled as I tried to make sense of everything. What did the words mean? What connection did I have to this package? The weight of it felt almost suffocating. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was in over my head, drawn into a world far darker than I ever imagined. I took a moment to gather my thoughts, glancing around the park. The shadows were deep here, a sanctuary and a prison all at once. I needed to think, to understand what I was up against. As I peered into the night, the darkness seemed to shift, and I could have sworn I saw movement in the trees. A whisper of movement that sent chills racing down my spine. I couldn't afford to be caught off guard again. I turned my attention back to the box. My fingers brushed over the carved symbols, a sense of urgency pulling me closer. I had to discover its secrets and fast. Maybe there was a way to turn the tide, to confront whatever darkness had been unleashed. But before I could take another step, a sudden rustling in the bushes caught my attention. My heart stopped as I turned, every instinct screaming at me to run. There, lurking just beyond the shadows, was a pair of glowing eyes, watching, waiting. The growl erupted again, louder and more feral, sending a jolt of fear coursing through me. I knew it was here, just a breath away. I felt the box slip from my grasp, hitting the ground with a heavy thud. In that moment, I realized I had to make a choice, fight or flight. But as the creature emerged from the darkness, I knew my decision had already been made. The creature stepped into the dim moonlight, its form both grotesque and fascinating. Muscles rippled beneath dark, matted fur, and its elongated snout glistened with a sheen of moisture, revealing rows of sharp, glistening teeth. The eyes were the worst, glowing like embers. They bore into me, reflecting an intelligence that sent a wave of icy terror coursing through my veins. I stumbled backward, my heart racing, the fear coiling tightly in my chest. I could feel the cold sweat trickling down my back, the world narrowing to just me and this predatory creature. The growl grew louder, vibrating in the air, a deep, guttural sound that seemed to resonate within my bones. I could feel the weight of the ornate box pressing against my leg, a reminder of my connection to whatever dark force had summoned this nightmare. I had to get away to escape its gaze. But where? The shadows behind me felt like an abyss, and the park ahead looked just as foreboding. With a sudden surge of adrenaline, I lunged to my right, dodging the creature's snapping jaws as they lunged toward me. I could hear the rush of air as its fangs sliced through the space where I had just been. I raced down a narrow path lined with ancient trees, branches clawing at me like skeletal fingers as I dashed forward, the underbrush crackling beneath my feet. The creature pursued me relentlessly, its heavy footsteps pounding against the ground, echoing like a war drum. I glanced back, catching a glimpse of its powerful form, muscles coiling with each leap. Panic surged within me as I pushed myself harder, adrenaline fueling my flight. "Well, think, I shouted to myself, forcing my mind to focus despite the chaos. My options were limited. The park was a maze of trees and darkness, and I needed to find a way to outsmart this beast. Ahead I spotted a thick cluster of bushes. It might provide cover. I veered toward it, diving into the undergrowth just as the creature's growl thundered behind me, sounding furious and hungry. I could feel the earth beneath me as I crouched low, my breath coming in sharp gasps. In the depths of the bushes, I fumbled for the box, now desperately seeking answers. I unlatched it once more, heart pounding in sync with the growls that echoed through the park. The soft light spilled out again, illuminating the items inside. The pendant shimmered as if it had a pulse of its own, and the vial of dark liquid seemed to absorb the light, turning it into a sinister blackness. I grabbed the pendant, its surface cool against my skin. Maybe it was a key to understanding this madness. What if it held the power to repel the creature? With shaky hands, I slipped it around my neck, feeling an odd sense of calm wash over me, even amid the chaos. The growling ceased for a moment, and I held my breath, straining to hear. The silence felt heavy, pregnant with anticipation. I dared to peek through the branches, my heart racing as I scanned the area. The creature prowled nearby, its glowing eyes scanning the shadows, searching for me. It was a terrifying sight, a primal force of nature that seemed both savage and cunning. I could feel its energy in the air, an electric tension that made my skin crawl. This was my chance. I had to act before it picked up my scent again. Gathering every ounce of courage, I squeezed through the bushes, clutching the box tightly to my chest. I maneuvered silently, my heart racing as I kept my eyes on the creature, which was now sniffing the ground, searching. I slipped further into the trees, every instinct screaming for me to run. I could feel the pendant growing warm against my skin, almost as if it sensed the danger looming nearby. The creature shifted, its attention drawn in my direction. I hesitated, then whispered, "What do I do?" In response, a pulse of energy surged from the pendant, coursing through my body. My fear began to fade, replaced by an unexpected sense of purpose. I clenched my fists, feeling the power resonate within me. Maybe this was the key to turning the tide. I took a deep breath and stepped into the clearing, standing tall despite the fear gnawing at my insides. "You want me," I called out, my voice stronger than I felt. "Come and get me." The creature turned its gaze toward me, surprise flashing in its eyes, quickly replaced by hunger. It lunged forward, a blur of fur and muscle. But instead of retreating, I stood my ground, holding the pendant aloft. "Stay back," I shouted, forcing the words past the tremor in my throat. As I raised the pendant, it glowed brighter, illuminating the darkness around me. The creature skidded to a halt, hesitating as if the light had burned it. I could see its expression shift from rage to confusion, a primal instinct battling with the fear of the unknown. "Whatever you are, I'm not afraid of you," I declared, my voice ringing out into the night. The words felt powerful, infused with the energy from the pendant. The creature snarled, the growl reverberating through the air, but it didn't move closer. Instead, it paced, circling me, its eyes narrowing as it weighed its options. I could feel the tension rising, an electric charge hanging between us. "Is this what you want?" I asked, pointing the pendant directly at it. "Is this the power you seek?" For a moment the creature paused, almost as if considering my challenge. I could see the raw intelligence in its eyes, an understanding that went beyond mere instinct. The air around us crackled with energy, and I felt the weight of the moment pressing down on me. Then, in a sudden burst of movement, it lunged again. But this time I was ready. I thrust the pendant forward, and a blinding light erupted from it, engulfing the creature in a wave of energy. It howled, a sound that was both fury and pain, staggering back as the light wrapped around it like a cocoon. I felt the power surge through me, a connection forming between us. The darkness that had chased me now seemed to recoil, retreating from the radiance of the pendant. "Leave me alone," I screamed, pouring every ounce of my will into the words, the light intensifying with my fury. The creature writhed, trapped in the glow, its eyes flashing with desperation. "You think you can control this?" it hissed, its voice a mix of anger and fear. "I don't want to control anything," I shouted back, feeling the weight of the box pressing into my side. "I just want to be free." In that moment, the pendant pulsed violently, sending out a shockwave that knocked me off my feet. I landed hard on the ground, gasping for breath as the light exploded outward, engulfing everything around us. I blinked, disoriented, and when I opened my eyes, the creature was gone. The clearing was silent, the shadows retreating into the darkness. I lay there panting, trying to process what had just happened. Had I really banished it? Or had it merely retreated to regroup? I couldn't shake the feeling that this battle was far from over. As I pushed myself to my feet, the night felt eerily calm. The pendant still glowed faintly against my chest, a reminder of the power I had tapped into. But with that power came the realization that I was now entangled in something much larger than myself. I glanced back at the path I had taken, the darkness seeming to beckon me. I couldn't stay here, not when the threat could return at any moment. I had to uncover the truth behind the box and the pendant. With renewed determination, I started moving again, the shadows following me like old friends. I would unravel the mystery, face the darkness that had pursued me, and finally confront whatever awaited me in this twisted game of fate. The moon hung high above me, casting a silvery glow that danced through the branches, illuminating my path as I moved deeper into the park. The air was thick with tension, a palpable sense of anticipation swirling around me like an unseen fog. The encounter with the creature had left me shaken, but I refused to let fear dictate my actions any longer. I had tasted power, however brief, and I was determined to uncover its secrets. As I navigated the winding paths, the shadows around me felt alive, shifting with every step I took. The pendant, still warm against my chest, seemed to hum softly, as if urging me onward. I couldn't ignore the connection I felt to it. It was more than just an object, it was a key, a gateway to understanding what had been set in motion that night. I reached a small clearing where the moonlight pooled like silver water. Here the air was still, and for a moment I let my thoughts settle. The ornate box lay heavy in my backpack, a constant reminder of the dark task ahead. I needed to open it again to delve deeper into the mysteries it held. With trembling hands, I pulled the box from my bag and placed it on the ground. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool night air fill my lungs as I steadied my nerves. The symbols carved into the wood glimmered faintly in the moonlight, beckoning me to unlock their secrets. I unlatched the lid and the soft glow returned, illuminating my face with a warm light. Inside, the items were still arranged as I had left them. The pendant shimmered, the vial of dark liquid seemed to pulse, and the parchment lay waiting, its secrets tantalizingly close. I picked up the parchment first, unfolding it with care. The words danced in my mind, elusive yet potent. The eye sees all, the blood binds us. I felt a chill at the mention of blood. What did it mean? My thoughts raced, memories surfacing of old legends and dark tales whispered in hushed tones. My grandmother had often spoken of ancient curses and the bonds that tied us to our ancestors, how blood was more than just a physical connection. It was a thread woven into the very fabric of our existence. I glanced back at the pendant, a sudden thought striking me. Was this the eye mentioned in the parchment? My fingers brushed against its surface, and I felt a jolt of energy surge through me. It was as if the pendant was awakening, responding to my curiosity. I turned my attention to the vial, its contents swirling darkly within. The scent from it had been acrid, almost sulfuric. I hesitated, uncertainty creeping in. Should I open it? What if it unleashed something I couldn't control? But then again, knowledge was power, and I had come too far to turn back now. Gingerly I uncorked the vial, a puff of smoke escaping as the stopper came free. The acrid smell intensified, filling the air with a suffocating weight. I recoiled, holding my breath, but curiosity propelled me to peer inside. The liquid was thick, almost viscous, swirling with shades of black and deep crimson. I couldn't help but wonder what it would reveal if I dared to taste it. Suddenly, a distant rustle in the bushes jolted me from my reverie. My heart raced as I quickly replaced the stopper, the vial clattering against the box. I stood up, instincts honed, my eyes scanning the shadows. Was it the creature? Had it followed me here? I felt a surge of adrenaline, my senses heightened as I prepared for whatever might emerge from the dark. The shadows flickered, and I could hear low growls echoing through the trees, a warning that I was not alone. Then from the underbrush, a figure stepped into the clearing, a tall silhouette, its features obscured by the shadows. I could barely make out the outline, but something about it felt familiar. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. The figure hesitated, then stepped forward into the moonlight. It was a woman, her dark hair falling in waves around her shoulders, her eyes glinting like those of the creature that had chased me. But there was something human about her, a spark of recognition that sent a chill through me. "Do you remember me?" she asked, her voice low and almost melodic, yet laced with an edge of danger. "We met once long ago, before all this." I squinted, searching her face for familiarity, but the shadows obscured her features. "Who are you?" I demanded, taking a step back. "What do you want?" She smiled, a knowing look in her eyes. "I'm here to help you, but you need to trust me." "Help me?" I echoed, incredulous. "After everything that's happened." She nodded, moving closer, the moonlight revealing her features more clearly. Her expression was fierce yet sympathetic. You have something very powerful in your hands, and it has awakened something that should have remained asleep. The creature you encountered, it's drawn to you. You are marked and you cannot escape your fate. I felt a surge of anger rise within me. I didn't ask for any of this. I just wanted to deliver a package. She held up her hands, a gesture of peace. I know, but this is bigger than you or me. The pendant, the vial, they are keys to an ancient power. You must understand their significance before it's too late. What do you mean? I pressed, desperate for answers. What power? What does it want from me? The pendant allows you to see beyond the veil, to tap into the forces that govern this world. The vial contains a potion that can either protect or curse you, depending on how you choose to wield it. The creature is drawn to the energy you emit. It's instinctive. I shook my head, overwhelmed. But why me? Why now? She took a step closer, her gaze piercing. Because you are connected to it. Your bloodline carries the weight of this legacy. You are the only one who can confront the darkness that threatens to consume everything. Her words settled around me like a shroud, heavy and suffocating. I could feel the weight of her claim pressing down on me, but deep within, a flicker of defiance ignited. I had already faced fear tonight. I wouldn't shy away now. Then what do I need to do? I asked, steeling myself for the task ahead. First, you must embrace the power you possess. The pendant will guide you, but you must learn to control it. The vial can protect you, but it requires a sacrifice, something personal that binds you to your true self. Only then can you confront the creature. I took a deep breath, the weight of her words settling in. And if I refuse, the darkness will consume you, and it will not stop until it has claimed what it desires. I glanced at the pendant, its glow steady against my skin, and then at the vial, the shadows swirling ominously within. I felt the pull of destiny, and despite my trepidation, I knew I had come too far to turn back now. All right, I said, my voice firm. I'll do it. I'll confront this darkness. A smile broke across her face, a mixture of relief and determination. Good, but remember, you're not alone. Trust the pendant, it will guide you. We must prepare, for the creature will return, and when it does, you need to be ready. With that, she stepped back into the shadows, leaving me alone in the clearing, the weight of the box in my hands feeling heavier than ever. I glanced at the pendant, the vial, and the darkness swirling around me. It was time to unravel the mysteries, to confront whatever awaited in the shadows, and to reclaim the power that had been thrust upon me. As I took a deep breath and gathered my resolve, I could feel the night pulse with anticipation. This was just the beginning. The darkness would come again, and I would be ready to face it head on. I hope you enjoyed the first story. If you did, don't forget to leave a like, but if I didn't do my job well, feel free to give it a thumbs down. Either way, drop a comment and let us know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, let's continue. What happens when someone simply vanishes? The question echoed in my mind, like the hollow ring of a bell long after it's been struck. I stood in front of the old brick building, its facade worn by time and neglect. My name is Alex, a private investigator with a penchant for digging into the past. But this case felt different. It pulsed with an unsettling energy, as if the very air around it was charged with secrets. The street was uncharacteristically quiet. The usual hum of life, a distant car engine, laughter from nearby cafes, seemed to have fallen silent. Only the sound of my footsteps echoed in the cool evening air. A shiver ran down my spine. There was something about this place that felt off. I glanced up and noticed a flickering streetlight, its glow casting erratic shadows that danced along the pavement. I took a deep breath and stepped closer to the entrance. The door creaked as I pushed it open, revealing a dimly lit hallway. The smell of dampness hit me first, mingling with an undertone of something metallic like rust. As I entered, the door clicked shut behind me, the sound resonating ominously. "Hello," I called, my voice barely breaking the stillness. No response. My heart began to race, but I pushed the feeling aside. This was just another investigation, right? I was here to uncover the truth about a young woman named Emily who had disappeared without a trace. The hallway stretched before me, lined with faded photographs and peeling wallpaper. I felt the weight of each step I took, the atmosphere thickening around me. The house whispered of past lives, stories trapped in the walls. But there was something more, an invisible thread of tension, as if I were being watched. I shook the feeling off and moved deeper into the building. I reached the living room, its furnishings covered in dust, untouched for years. An old clock ticked steadily in the corner, the only sound breaking the silence. I moved cautiously, examining the space. In the corner of the room lay a pile of letters, yellowed with age. Curiosity piqued, I bent down to examine them. The moment I touched the letters, a strange sensation washed over me. The air thickened, and I felt a chill run down my spine. It was a reminder that I was not alone. I glanced around, half expecting to see someone standing in the shadows. My pulse quickened. This wasn't just a house, it was a repository of memories, both beautiful and haunting. As I sifted through the letters, I discovered a few dated notes, their content disturbing. References to strange noises at night, shadows that moved when no one was there, and a growing sense of unease. The last letter was especially chilling. It spoke of someone watching, lurking just beyond the edge of perception. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. Suddenly a noise interrupted my thoughts, a faint rustling from the hallway. My heart raced as I turned toward the sound. Had someone followed me in? I strained to listen, the silence now feeling suffocating. The ticking clock became a deafening reminder of my isolation. I made my way back to the hallway, my footsteps silent against the worn floor. The light flickered again, casting eerie shapes that twisted and turned, heightening my unease. I paused, straining to hear anything beyond the silence. Then I heard it, a soft whisper, indistinct but clear enough to send a shiver down my spine. "Help me." I froze. Was it my imagination? I shook my head, trying to dispel the creeping dread. "Is anyone there?" I called out, my voice trembling slightly. No answer, just the oppressive silence of the old house. I took a step forward, compelled by a mixture of fear and curiosity. The whisper echoed again, a desperate plea that seemed to resonate from the walls themselves. Help me. Instinctively, I moved toward the source of the sound, my heart pounding in my chest. The whisper seemed to guide me, pulling me deeper into the house. I felt a strange mix of excitement and terror. What was happening here? I had come seeking answers about Emily, but it felt as though the house itself was alive, holding its breath as if waiting for something to unfold. I reached a door at the end of the hallway, its surface scratched and worn. I hesitated, a knot tightening in my stomach. I knew I should turn back, that this was unwise. But the urge to know, to uncover whatever mystery lay beyond, overpowered my hesitation. With trembling hands, I grasped the doorknob and turned it slowly. The door creaked open, revealing a dark room beyond. I stepped inside, the chill of the air washing over me like a cold wave. The faintest glimmer of moonlight slipped through a small window, illuminating the dust motes swirling in the air. The room was empty except for a single chair in the center, facing away from me. I took a cautious step forward, the floor creaking under my weight. The whisper returned, clearer now, almost urgent. Help me. I felt my breath catch in my throat. The hairs on my arms stood on end. I moved closer to the chair, the shadow of it looming large in my mind. What awaited me? A sudden rush of wind blew through the room, slamming the door shut behind me with a loud bang. Panic surged through my veins. I turned to the door, but it wouldn't budge. The air grew colder, and I felt a presence behind me. I turned slowly, dread pooling in my stomach. The chair was empty, yet I could feel an energy pulsating in the room, an intangible weight pressing down on me. Help me, the voice was now right next to me, chillingly close. I gasped and stumbled back, my heart racing. The shadows in the room twisted and contorted, and I felt a deep sense of foreboding. I had stepped into something far beyond my understanding. The hunt for Emily was just beginning, and already I was ensnared in a web of darkness that threatened to consume me. The shadows danced closer, and I braced myself for whatever would come next. I had to escape this place. I had to uncover the truth. But as the whispering shadows closed in, I realized that I was not just searching for Emily. I was also searching for my own salvation. The shadows pressed in, wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. My breath came in short, rapid gasps as I stumbled backward, desperately trying to escape the unseen presence that loomed in the dark. The air crackled with a palpable tension, a silent scream begging for release. Help me, the voice echoed in my ears, sending chills coursing through my body. It was no longer just a whisper, it felt like a command. I needed to think clearly, to ground myself in reality. I turned and rushed to the door, yanking on the knob with all my strength. It was as if the very structure of the house conspired against me, refusing to yield. Panic surged, and I felt the weight of dread settle in my chest. The air grew heavier, filled with an energy that prickled my skin. Get out, I shouted, the sound of my own voice feeling foreign and desperate in the oppressive silence. But the door remained obstinately closed. I turned back to the room, the dim light casting eerie shapes on the walls. The chair still stood empty, a silent witness to whatever horrors unfolded here. What was this place? What had happened to Emily? My mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of the mystery. I remembered the letters I had found earlier, the chilling references to shadows and whispers. What if this was more than just a missing person case? What if I had stepped into something far darker? With renewed determination, I stepped further into the room. The walls seemed to pulse with life, and I could almost hear the house breathing, as if it were aware of my presence. I needed to find a way out, but I also needed to understand what was happening. What was it trying to tell me? I moved cautiously toward the chair, feeling drawn to it. A sense of familiarity washed over me, as if I had been here before, though I couldn't recall when or how. The whispers continued, swirling around me, pulling at the edges of my mind. I had to focus. I had to listen. Help me, the voice was insistent, desperate. It wasn't just a call for help, it was an invitation, a challenge. I felt an inexplicable connection, as if I were being beckoned to uncover the truth that lay buried beneath the layers of dust and despair. I reached the chair and hesitated. What if I were to sit? What if it held the key to understanding the past? I took a deep breath and lowered myself onto the seat, feeling the cold wood beneath me. The moment I settled in, a jolt of energy coursed through my body, and the room seemed to shift around me. Suddenly the air felt different. The shadows flickered, and a vision enveloped my mind. I saw flashes of a life once lived in this very room, a woman with flowing dark hair, laughter echoing through the walls. But the laughter faded, replaced by a sense of fear. I watched as she paced the floor, glancing over her shoulder as if expecting someone or something. My heart raced. Was this Emily? Images danced before me, interspersed with glimpses of darkness, the flicker of a figure lurking just out of sight. The room was filled with her desperation, a haunting sorrow that wrapped around me like a shroud. I wanted to scream, to wake from this nightmarish vision, but I was trapped. Help me, the voice echoed again, clearer now. I could see her face, her eyes wide with terror. She was reaching out, imploring me to understand. I felt an overwhelming urge to comfort her, to let her know she wasn't alone. I closed my eyes, focusing on the warmth of my breath, grounding myself in reality. I'm here, I whispered. I'll help you, the vision intensified, pulling me deeper into the past. I was no longer just a witness. I felt her emotions, the terror, the isolation. Suddenly the vision shattered, replaced by a blinding darkness. I gasped, the cold air rushing back into my lungs as I blinked against the sudden change. I was still in the room, the chair still beneath me. But something had shifted. The presence that had loomed in the shadows felt different now, more tangible. I stood abruptly, feeling disoriented. My heart pounded against my ribcage as I scanned the room, looking for any sign of movement. The door still loomed ahead, but now it felt like a barrier between me and the truth. I needed to escape the grip of this house, but I also needed to find out what had happened to Emily. In the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of something, a small object glinting in the dim light. I approached cautiously, kneeling down to examine it. It was a locket intricately designed, its surface tarnished with age. I opened it gently, revealing a faded photograph of a woman and a young girl, both smiling brightly. The woman bore an uncanny resemblance to Emily. Could this locket belong to her? My pulse quickened as I realized the implications. This wasn't just a case of disappearance. It was deeply personal, entwined with the lives of those who had once filled this space with joy and laughter. I turned the locket over, noticing an inscription on the back. Always in my heart, it read, accompanied by a date, years before Emily's disappearance. I pocketed the locket, feeling the weight of its significance. It was a connection, a piece of the puzzle I desperately needed. But just as I turned to leave, the whispers returned, louder now, swirling in a chaotic crescendo. The room vibrated with energy, and I felt a force pushing me back. Stay, it seemed to command, a chilling invitation that sent a jolt of fear through my veins. No, I shouted, fueled by the urgency to escape. I had come too far to turn back now. I rushed to the door, wrenching the knob with all my might. The door finally gave way, swinging open with a loud creak that echoed through the silence. I stumbled into the hallway, heart racing, adrenaline coursing through my veins. But the whispers followed, echoing in the back of my mind. I needed to leave this house, to gather my thoughts and plan my next move. As I stepped out into the cool night air, the shadows outside felt less oppressive. I took a deep breath, grounding myself in the reality of the moment. The investigation had only just begun, and I was determined to find Emily and unravel the darkness that shrouded her disappearance. But deep down, I knew the house had more to reveal. Its secrets were woven into the very fabric of this neighborhood, and I was about to uncover them, no matter the cost. The cool night air hit me like a wave as I stepped out of the house, bringing with it a fleeting sense of freedom. But the weight of what I had just experienced clung to me, an invisible shroud that refused to lift. My heart pounded, and I could still hear the echoes of the whispers reverberating in my mind, a haunting reminder of the mysteries hidden within those walls. I took a moment to gather myself, the dim streetlights casting long shadows across the pavement. The neighborhood seemed eerily quiet, each sound amplified, the rustle of leaves, the distant hum of a car, the faint chirping of crickets. Everything felt heightened, as if the world were on the brink of revelation or disaster. I pulled out the locket from my pocket, running my fingers over its cold, tarnished surface. The photograph inside still radiated warmth, the smiles of the woman and girl beckoning me closer. Who were they? Were they connected to Emily? I couldn't shake the feeling that this locket was a key, a crucial piece of the puzzle that would unlock the truth behind her disappearance. Determined, I started walking down the dimly lit street. My mind raced as I considered my next steps. I needed to find out more about Emily, about her life before the shadows had claimed her. I remembered the small cafe where she used to work. Perhaps her coworkers could shed light on her last days. As I approached the cafe, I noticed a flickering light in the window. It was open, but the atmosphere inside felt off, like a scene from a movie where something dark lurked just beneath the surface. I hesitated at the entrance, listening intently. A low murmur of voices drifted out, mingling with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. I pushed the door open, the chime of the bell above echoing in the stillness. The familiar scent enveloped me, grounding me momentarily. The cafe was nearly empty, save for a few late-night patrons hunched over their laptops, lost in their own worlds. At the counter stood Mia, a barista with bright blue hair and an infectious smile. She looked up and greeted me warmly, but there was a flicker of concern in her eyes when she noticed the unease etched on my face. "Well, hey, long time no see. How have you been?" she asked, but I could hear the hesitance in her tone. I swallowed hard, memories of Emily flooding back. "Actually, I'm looking for Emily. I heard she was working here. Do you know where she is?" Mia's smile faltered, and she glanced around the cafe before leaning closer. "She hasn't been here in weeks. It's unusual." She was so reliable, her brow furrowed, and I could see the concern morph into something darker. "There have been rumors, about the area. People going missing, strange things happening at night." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What kind of rumors?" Mia hesitated again, her eyes darting toward the other patrons. "Just people talking. A few customers said they saw things, shadows, figures lurking in the alleyways. It's probably just stories," but she trailed off, biting her lip. "Emily mentioned anything strange to you?" I pressed, urgency clawing at me. "No, but she seemed a bit off before she left." Like she was hiding something, Mia confessed, her voice dropping to a whisper. She'd get these texts and would rush off, looking frightened. I thought maybe she was dealing with something personal. "Did she ever show you those texts?" Mia shook her head. "No, she kept everything to herself. But you should talk to Marcus. He worked closely with her. He might know more." Marcus. The name rang a bell. He had always been friendly with Emily, sharing laughs during shifts. I had seen them chatting often. "Where can I find him?" "He usually hangs out at the bar down the street after his shift. It's a dive, but it's where everyone goes to unwind." She hesitated, her gaze penetrating mine. "Be careful, okay? There's something off about this whole situation." I nodded, feeling the weight of her words settle in my gut. "Well, thanks, Mia." As I left the cafe, the night air felt heavier, charged with an energy that set my teeth on edge. I walked briskly toward the bar, a small, dimly lit place that seemed to thrive on the secrets whispered within its walls. Each step felt laden with anticipation and dread. When I arrived, the neon sign flickered erratically, casting a sickly glow over the entrance. The atmosphere inside was thick with the smell of stale beer and cigarettes. A few patrons lingered at the bar, their laughter punctuated by the clink of glasses and the low hum of a jukebox. I scanned the room, my heart pounding as I searched for Marcus. Finally, I spotted him at the far end of the bar, nursing a drink. His face was familiar, but it was the weariness in his eyes that caught my attention. I approached cautiously, my resolve strengthening with each step. "Marcus," I called, and he looked up, surprise flickering across his features. "Do you have a moment?" "Yeah, sure," he replied, motioning for me to sit beside him. "What's up?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. "I'm looking for Emily. Mia said you might know something about her disappearance." His expression shifted instantly, and I could see the tension ripple through him. "Emily? Yeah, I haven't seen her in a while." "Do you know why? Did something happen before she left?" I pressed, noting the way his hands gripped the bar. He hesitated, his gaze darting toward the other patrons, as if he feared being overheard. "It's complicated. She was different in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. She received strange messages, and then one night she just vanished. It was like she was pulled into thin air. Strange messages, I asked, feeling my pulse quicken. Yeah, she'd get these texts that made her anxious. I tried to read one once, but she snatched her phone away. His voice dropped to a whisper. People said she was involved in something dangerous. Something she shouldn't have been. What do you mean? I don't know the details, he said, shaking his head. But there are whispers about a group operating in the area, involved in things. Dark things. The tension in the air thickened, and I lined in closer. What kind of things? He glanced around again, eyes wide with fear. There are rumors of trafficking, underground dealings. I can't say much more, but if Emily was involved, it could explain her sudden disappearance. My heart raced, adrenaline surging through my veins. This was no longer just a missing person case. It was a descent into darkness, a journey through a web of crime and danger that threatened to ensnare me as well. I need to find her, I declared, determination flooding my voice. Do you know where I can start? Marcus looked conflicted, as if he were wrestling with a choice. There's a place, a warehouse on the outskirts of town. People say it's where the group meets. But it's dangerous. I can't go with you, but be careful. If you're really going to look for Emily, you need to know what you're getting into. Thank you, Marcus. I appreciate it. As I left the bar, the gravity of my mission weighed heavily on my shoulders. The darkness that enveloped the town was deeper than I had imagined, and I was stepping into its depths. I couldn't turn back now. Not when Emily was out there, possibly in grave danger. The warehouse loomed in my mind, a fortress of secrets just waiting to be uncovered. I could almost feel the shadows reaching out, calling me to discover the truth hidden within. And as I walked into the night, I steeled myself for what lay ahead, ready to face whatever darkness awaited me. The drive to the warehouse felt like an eternity, each passing minute amplifying the anxiety gnawing at my insides. The streetlights flickered by, casting fleeting shadows that seemed to dance around my car, mocking my growing dread. I could barely focus on the road, my mind racing with thoughts of Emily, where she could be, what she might be enduring, and the dark truths lurking in the shadows. The warehouse was located on the outskirts of town, nestled between dilapidated buildings and overgrown weeds. As I pulled into the cracked lot, a shiver crawled up my spine. The structure loomed ahead, a hulking mass of concrete and rusted metal, its windows shattered and covered in grime. It felt abandoned, yet an unsettling energy radiated from it, a warning that danger lurked within. I parked the car and took a deep breath, my heart pounding in my chest. The night was eerily silent, save for the distant chirping of crickets and the soft rustle of leaves in the wind. The air was thick with tension, every sound amplified in the stillness. I glanced at the locket again, its surface cold against my palm, a reminder of my purpose. I stepped out of the car, my footsteps echoing on the asphalt as I approached the entrance. The door creaked ominously as I pushed it open, the scent of dampness and decay hitting me like a wave. Inside, the darkness was almost tangible, wrapping around me as I moved deeper into the warehouse. The interior was a labyrinth of crates and shadows, the faint outline of long-abandoned machinery jutting out like specters in the gloom. I strained to hear any signs of life, voices, footsteps, anything. Instead, I was met with an oppressive silence that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. As I ventured further, I focused on the details around me, the way the light from my phone flickered against the walls, casting strange shapes that seemed to shift and swirl. I stopped at a pile of crates stacked haphazardly in a corner, noticing something glimmering among the debris. Crouching down, I picked up a broken necklace, its chain twisted and tangled. It was similar to the one Emily used to wear. A cold knot of fear twisted in my stomach. Emily, I whispered, the name slipping from my lips like a prayer. Just then I heard it, a faint sound, like the shuffle of footsteps coming from deeper within the warehouse. My heart raced, pounding so hard I could almost hear it over the eerie silence. I pressed myself against the wall, straining to listen. The footsteps were growing louder, accompanied by hushed voices. I couldn't make out the words, but the tension in their tone sent a chill down my spine. I had to be careful. Whoever was in there could be involved in something dangerous, something that could lead to Emily. Taking a deep breath, I moved quietly through the shadows, trying to blend in with the darkness. Each step felt heavy with purpose, every sound amplified in my ears. As I approached the source of the noise, I could see a faint glow coming from a room at the back. I inched closer, my heart hammering in my chest. Peering through a gap in the door, I saw a group of men gathered around a table, their faces illuminated by a single flickering bulb overhead. They were discussing something with fervor, their expressions tense and serious. I strained to hear their conversation, but the words were muffled. Just as I was about to pull away, a loud crash echoed through the warehouse, followed by a burst of laughter. The group paused, exchanging nervous glances before returning to their hushed discussion. My pulse quickened. This was my chance to gather more information. Suddenly, I caught a glimpse of a figure standing at the edge of the room. A woman. Her hair was disheveled and her clothing looked torn, as if she had been through a struggle. My breath hitched in my throat. It was Emily. I felt a surge of adrenaline, but I knew I had to remain hidden. As I watched, the men gestured toward her, their faces twisted in menace. One of them, a stocky man with a scar running down his cheek, lined in clothes. You think you can just disappear? We don't take kindly to traitors. Emily's voice, shaky but defiant, broke through the tension. I won't be part of this anymore. You can't control me. A wave of determination surged within me. I couldn't wait any longer. I had to act. Gathering my courage, I pushed the door open slightly and stepped into the room, my heart pounding with fear and resolve. Let her go, I shouted, my voice cutting through the haze of tension like a knife. All heads turned toward me, eyes wide with surprise and hostility. Emily's face lit up with recognition, a flicker of hope amidst the fear. But the men shifted, their expressions hardening. Who the hell are you? The scarred man growled, stepping forward, his body tense with aggression. I'm here to take her away from you, I shot back, trying to keep my voice steady. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins, a mix of fear and defiance. The men exchanged glances, and in that brief moment of uncertainty, I saw my chance. I stepped further into the room, positioning myself between Emily and the men. You don't want this to escalate, I warned, my voice lower now, but laced with conviction. One of the men chuckled darkly, his eyes narrowing. And what are you going to do? You think you can take her from us? You have no idea who you're dealing with. I glanced back at Emily, who was looking at me with a mix of gratitude and fear. I won't let them hurt you, I promised her, then turned my gaze back to the men. But I'm not afraid to fight if I have to. The tension in the air thickened, a palpable force that felt like a ticking time bomb. The scarred man's expression shifted from amusement to irritation. You're making a big mistake, kid. Before I could react, he lunged at me, and instinct kicked in. I dodged to the side, grabbing a nearby metal pipe as I did. It was cold and heavy in my hands, a makeshift weapon that felt oddly reassuring. The room erupted into chaos. The men charged forward, and I swung the pipe with all my might, connecting with the first man's arm. He yelped, stumbling back, and I caught a glimpse of Emily's wide eyes filled with fear and admiration. "Run!" I shouted to her, but she hesitated, her expression torn between fear for my safety and her desire to escape. Before I could urge her again, the scarred man regained his footing and lunged at me. I sidestepped, the adrenaline fueling my movements. "I won't let you take her," I shouted, swinging the pipe again. But the other men were closing in, and I could feel the panic rising in my chest. I had to protect Emily and get us out of there. I glanced at the door, our only escape. "Emily now," I yelled, pushing her toward the exit. She snapped out of her daze, and together we sprinted for the door, the sounds of shouts and chaos echoing behind us. As we burst through the door and into the night, I felt a rush of adrenaline and fear. We had to get away, but I knew they wouldn't let us go easily. The darkness of the warehouse loomed behind us, but we had a chance. We ran toward my car, heartbeats pounding in sync as the sounds of pursuit echoed in the distance. We had to escape. The fight was far from over. The night air was thick with tension as we sprinted toward my car, the sound of our footsteps echoing off the cracked pavement. Each step felt like a race against time. I could hear the men shouting behind us, their angry voices punctuating the stillness of the night. It was a grim reminder that we were far from safe. Emily was beside me, her breath coming in quick gasps. I could see the fear etched on her face, and it drove me to run faster. "We need to get to the car." "Hurry," I urged, glancing back only briefly to catch a glimpse of our pursuers. The scarred man was at the forefront, his expression twisted with rage. Finally, we reached my car, the engine still warm from my earlier drive. I fumbled with the keys, my hands trembling as I struggled to insert them into the ignition. Come on," I muttered under my breath, my heart racing like a drum in my chest. Emily stood guard by the passenger door, her eyes darting back toward the warehouse, where shadows loomed ominously. The key clicked into place, and the engine roared to life. I glanced over at Emily, who was already sliding into the seat. "Get down," I yelled, slamming the gear shift into drive. I could hear the sound of heavy footsteps approaching, and I knew we didn't have a second to lose. As I peeled away from the curb, tires screeching against the asphalt, I caught sight of the scarred man rushing out of the warehouse, his face a mask of fury. I could feel my pulse racing, a mixture of adrenaline and fear flooding my veins. The car shot forward, but I could see him waving frantically to the others behind him, their figures emerging from the shadows. "Are they following us?" Emily asked, her voice shaking as she turned to look back. I didn't answer immediately, focusing on the road ahead, the familiarity of the streets blurring by in a rush. Yes, but I'll lose them, I replied, gripping the steering wheel tightly. The city was a maze, but my instincts kicked in. I took a sharp turn down a narrow street, glancing in the rearview mirror. The headlights of our pursuers flickered in the distance, but were losing ground. The weight of the moment pressed down on me. I could feel Emily's eyes on me, her silent gratitude mingling with the fear in the air. "I can't believe you came for me," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the engine's roar. "I promised I would," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. I had to keep it together for both of us. The thought of what could have happened if I hadn't shown up filled me with dread. Suddenly the car jolted as I hit a pothole, and I felt my stomach drop. The chase wasn't over. As I turned onto another street, I caught a glimpse of headlights gaining on us again. The scarred man's face twisted in anger, his car weaving dangerously through traffic. "Stay down," I shouted again, my heart pounding as I weaved through the streets, the thrill of the chase mixing with sheer terror. I had to find a way to shake them off, to buy us some time. I turned sharply into an alley, hoping it would lead to a dead end and give us the cover we needed. As we skidded to a stop, I quickly turned off the headlights and engine, plunging us into darkness. The alley was cramped, lined with dumpsters and shadowy figures that seemed to loom ominously. "Do you think they saw us?" Emily whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't know," I replied, holding my breath. The sounds of the pursuing car echoed down the street, the engine rumbling menacingly as it slowed. I could hear the heavy footsteps of the men getting closer, their voices filled with anger and frustration. "Split up. We'll find them," one of them shouted. My heart sank. They were looking for us. We couldn't stay here. I glanced around, trying to gauge our surroundings. A fire escape ladder led up to the rooftop, just within reach. "We need to get up there," I said, pointing. "It might buy us some time." Emily nodded, her eyes wide with fear but resolute. "Let's go." I opened the door slowly, scanning for any signs of the men. The coast seemed clear, so I climbed out first, then helped Emily. We moved quietly, our hearts pounding in our chests as we approached the ladder. I glanced up, the height seemed daunting, but there was no other option. I went first, climbing the rungs quickly but carefully. The metal felt cold against my palms, the night air nipping at my skin. I could hear Emily behind me, her breaths quick and panicked. I reached the top and pulled myself onto the roof, then turned to help her up. Once we were both safely on the rooftop, I took a moment to catch my breath. The city spread out beneath us, a sprawling sea of lights, but there was no time to appreciate the view. The sound of footsteps echoed from the alley below, and I peered over the edge. "They're searching the alley," I whispered urgently. I could see the men splitting up, their flashlights scanning the ground, illuminating the shadows. My stomach twisted at the thought of being caught. "What do we do now?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We wait," I said, my mind racing. "We need to see where they go and find a way to slip past them." We crouched low, trying to remain hidden among the rooftop clutter. My thoughts drifted back to the necklace I had found, the broken piece of Emily's past. What if this was more than just a chase? What if there were deeper connections to the crimes we had stumbled upon? I needed to know the truth for Emily's sake. Time dragged on as we listened to the men below. Their voices were low but tense, laced with frustration. They couldn't have gotten far, one of them muttered. Split up and search the area. As the men began to disperse, I felt a surge of determination. We couldn't let fear paralyze us. We had to act. I think we can make it to the next building over, I whispered, pointing to the adjacent rooftop. It seemed close enough to jump, but my heart raced at the thought of making the leap. Emily nodded, her expression steely. Let's do it. We positioned ourselves, gauging the distance. I took a deep breath and leapt first, landing on the edge of the other rooftop. I barely caught my balance but managed to steady myself. I turned to see Emily poised to jump. Just like that. You can do it, I encouraged her, my heart racing. With a determined look, she jumped. She landed hard but stayed upright, her relief palpable. We shared a brief glance, and I felt a flicker of hope amidst the chaos. But we couldn't rest. We pressed on, moving swiftly across the rooftops, navigating the maze of buildings as quietly as possible. Each creak of the old wood beneath our feet sent jolts of fear through me. We were still being hunted, and every second counted. Finally, we reached the edge of the last building before we'd have to descend. I glanced back at the alley below, still filled with searching shadows. We need to get down and find a way to blend in with the crowd, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Do you think they'll follow us? Emily asked, her eyes wide with concern. They might, I admitted, but we can't stay here. We need to get back to my car and figure out our next move. We found a fire escape leading down the side of the building and climbed carefully, making sure to stay silent. The street below was quiet now, but I could sense the weight of our situation bearing down on us. As we reached the ground, I scanned the area, searching for any signs of our pursuers. Let's move, I said, and we slipped into the shadows, staying low as we made our way toward the main street. Once we emerged, the bustling noise of the city surrounded us, cars honking, people chatting, music playing from nearby bars. It was a stark contrast to the darkness we had just escaped. I felt a glimmer of hope. We need to act normal, I told Emily, my voice low. If they see us looking suspicious, they'll know something off. We walked casually, blending into the crowd, but every instinct screamed at me to keep moving. The thrill of the chase was still fresh, and I could feel the tension building. We turned a corner, and I spotted my car just ahead, parked in a dimly lit area. Relief washed over me, but it was quickly replaced by a nagging fear. Keep an eye out, I whispered to Emily. We have to be quick. As we approached the car, I fished the keys out of my pocket, my heart racing. Just as I reached for the door, I froze. In the distance, I saw the familiar silhouette of the scarred man emerging from the shadows, his eyes scanning the street. My blood ran cold. They found us, I breathed, the realization hitting me like a punch to the gut. What do we do? Emily asked, her voice shaking. Get in the car. Now, I ordered, adrenaline surging through me. We both dove into the front seats, slamming the doors shut. I turned the key in the ignition, and the engine roared to life. As I threw the car into reverse, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The scarred man was sprinting toward us, his expression a mix of rage and determination. I felt panic rise as I hit the gas, tearing out of the parking spot just as he reached us. The city blurred by as I raced down the street, but I could hear the sounds of pursuit behind us. I had to lose them, had to get us to safety. With every turn I made, I could feel the weight of the chase bearing down on us, and I knew it was far from over. The darkness of that warehouse felt like a shadow that would never fully lift. But one thing was clear, we were in this together, and I would do whatever it took to keep Emily safe. Whatever truths lay ahead, I was determined to uncover them, even if it meant confronting the darkest corners of this nightmare. What if the stories of our past are not what we believe them to be? This question echoed in my mind as I entered the dimly lit archive room, the smell of old paper and dust enveloping me like a shroud. The air felt heavy, charged with a sense of anticipation, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. It was unsettling, as if the very documents I was about to uncover held secrets that wanted to remain buried. My name is Alex, and I am a local historian. I have dedicated my life to unearthing the truths behind our city's rich, but often murky history. Today, I had been granted access to a collection of ancient documents that had just been unearthed from the depths of the city's archives. They promised to reveal the stories of the people who lived here long before us, stories that could change everything we thought we knew. As I made my way through the rows of shelves filled with dusty boxes, I noticed a strange rustling sound coming from the far corner of the room. I paused, listening intently. Was it just the wind, or was something else lurking in the shadows? The hair on the back of my neck stood on end. I shook my head, dismissing the feeling as nerves. After all, I was here to uncover history, not ghosts. I approached the table at the center of the room, where stacks of documents awaited me. They were a mix of handwritten letters, official records, and cryptic notes. My heart raced with excitement as I began to sift through them, each one promising a glimpse into the lives of those who walked these streets long ago. The first document I unfolded was a letter dated over 100 years ago. It spoke of strange occurrences in the town, disappearances, shadows flitting at the edges of sight, and whispers that echoed in the night. I could feel a chill creeping down my spine as I read the words. Had these events been mere figments of imagination, or was there truth buried beneath the layers of time? As I continued to read, the atmosphere in the room shifted. A sudden draft swept through the space, causing the papers to rustle ominously. I glanced up, half expecting to see someone standing behind me, but there was nothing, only the oppressive silence of the archive. My pulse quickened. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was not alone. Then, as I delved deeper into the stack, I uncovered a tattered journal. The pages were yellowed and fragile, the ink faded but legible. I opened it carefully, the spine creaking in protest. The journal belonged to a woman named Margaret, who had lived in the city during a time of unrest. Her entries were filled with fear and anxiety, detailing a growing sense of dread in the community. One entry stood out, written in a frantic hand. They say the old bags hold the memories of the past. I fear they are not just stories but warnings. I frowned, puzzled. What were the old bags? Was it a metaphor or something more sinister? The deeper I read, the more I felt the weight of Margaret's words pressing down on me. She spoke of voices in the night, of being watched, and of secrets that had long been hidden. As I turned the page, I noticed something strange. An inked blot shaped like a dark figure lurked at the edge of the text, as if it were trying to escape the confines of the page. Suddenly I heard a noise behind me, a soft creak, followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps. My heart raced, adrenaline surging through my veins. I turned quickly, but the room was still empty, the shadows stretching ominously across the floor. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. It was just my imagination, I told myself. But as I looked back at the journal, I felt a chill wash over me. The hairs on my arms stood on end. It was then that I realized the sense of being watched was not just paranoia. Something about this place felt wrong. I decided to leave the archive, the documents clutched tightly in my hands. I had to process what I had read. The city I thought I knew felt suddenly alien, as if it were harboring dark secrets just beneath the surface. I stepped out into the cold evening air, my mind racing with questions. What if the old bags truly held the memories of the past? What if the stories were not only warnings, but a call to uncover the truth? As I walked home, the streetlights flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced around me. The weight of the night settled in my chest, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting for me, something that had been awakened by my discovery. I was determined to uncover the truth, but I was beginning to realize that some secrets are best left undisturbed. The old bags held more than just history. They held the potential for something far more terrifying. As I reached my front door, I paused, glancing back at the street. For a fleeting moment, I thought I saw a figure lurking in the shadows, but when I turned to look again, there was nothing there. I shook my head, trying to dispel the unsettling feeling that clung to me. Tomorrow, I would return to the archive. I needed to delve deeper into the secrets of the old bags, no matter what awaited me. Little did I know the past was not finished with me yet. The morning light filtered through the curtains, casting slanting beams across my cluttered desk. I rubbed my eyes, still haunted by the shadows that had danced in the corners of my mind the night before. The journal lay open beside me, its pages whispering secrets I could hardly grasp. I could still feel the weight of Margaret's words pressing against my chest, demanding to be understood. As I prepared to return to the archives, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was stepping into a web, one that had been intricately woven over decades, perhaps even centuries. I grabbed a notebook in my old leather bag, filling it with pens, highlighters, and a flashlight. I knew I might need it. The archive was not just a repository of knowledge, but also a labyrinth of mysteries waiting to ensnare the unwary. The streets were eerily quiet as I made my way to the archive, the usual bustle of the city muted as if the world was holding its breath. My heart raced with anticipation and anxiety. What more would I find hidden among the dusty shelves? Would I uncover the truth behind the old bags and the shadows they contained, or would I awaken something that should remain asleep? Upon entering the archive, the familiar scent of aged paper hit me like a wave. I glanced around, half expecting to see that elusive figure lurking in the shadows again, but the room was still. The soft hum of the fluorescent lights provided an odd comfort, though I remained acutely aware of the weight of silence enveloping me. I settled at the same table as before, the journal opened before me like a portal into another time. As I read further, I was struck by a particular entry dated just days before Margaret's last entry. She described a series of inexplicable occurrences. Items in her home moved without explanation, unsettling whispers echoed in the night, and her dreams became a cacophony of shadows and shapes. The final lines chilled me to the bone. I can feel them watching. I fear I will not be safe much longer. I paused, allowing the gravity of her situation to sink in. What had happened to her? Did her fear lead her to uncover truths that others wanted to keep hidden? The air around me felt thicker, almost electric, as if the past were pressing in on me, begging for attention. Driven by an instinct I couldn't fully understand, I began to search the archives for anything that might connect to Margaret. I rifled through old city directories and newspaper clippings, each page more yellowed and brittle than the last. Suddenly, I stumbled upon a faded newspaper article titled "Mysterious Disappearances Plague Our Town." The date was from just before Margaret's time. I leaned closer, my pulse quickening as I read about several residents who had vanished without a trace. The article mentioned sightings of strange figures near the old bags, large, hulking silhouettes that seemed to shift and change, elusive as shadows. I could feel my stomach knotting as I recalled the figure I thought I had seen the night before. Were these connections merely coincidences, or was something sinister lurking in the shadows of our history? Just then, a loud thud echoed from the back of the room, breaking my concentration. My heart leapt into my throat as I turned toward the sound, eyes straining to pierce the dim light. I saw a door slightly ajar, one that I was certain had been locked. The sudden chill in the air sent a shiver down my spine. Something was definitely off. Gathering my courage, I grabbed the flashlight from my bag and approached the door, each step feeling like a gamble against unseen forces. The door creaked open further, revealing a narrow hallway lined with more boxes and stacks of forgotten memories. The light from my flashlight flickered slightly as I stepped inside, illuminating the dust motes that hung suspended in the stale air. As I moved deeper into the hallway, I noticed an old metal filing cabinet, its surface dented and scratched. I pulled it open, revealing rows of files labeled with names and dates. One in particular caught my eye, Margaret L. My breath hitched as I pulled it out, a sense of urgency coursing through me. Inside the folder, I found old documents, photographs, and even a small lock of hair tied with a faded ribbon. The photographs depicted a young woman who bore an uncanny resemblance to the image I had formed of Margaret in my mind, eyes filled with curiosity and a hint of fear. I flipped through the pages, my hands trembling slightly, until I found a letter addressed to a local historian. It was dated just days before her disappearance. "Dear historian," it began, "I fear I am being watched. There are truths buried beneath our town, and I fear I may be getting too close. If you find this, please know that the past is not dead. It waits, restless and hungry." The weight of her words pressed down on me like a suffocating fog. Had she been trying to warn someone? I glanced over my shoulder, feeling the unsettling sensation of eyes upon me. The shadows in the hallway seemed to shift, growing darker as my heart raced. Suddenly, a noise behind me made me spin around. There it was again, that soft creak. I tightened my grip on the flashlight, heart pounding in my chest. The room felt alive, the very walls pulsing with secrets. I took a step back, ready to flee, when I noticed a figure at the end of the hallway, a dark silhouette framed by the dim light. Panic surged through me, and I bolted, the files slipping from my hands and scattering across the floor. I could feel the presence behind me, almost tangible, urging me to run faster. I burst through the door, stumbling back into the main archive room, gasping for breath. I slammed the door shut behind me, leaning against it as I tried to regain my composure. The shadows danced mockingly on the walls, and the sense of being watched enveloped me once more. I was no longer just an observer of history. I was a part of a story far more dangerous than I had ever imagined. With the journal clutched tightly in my hand, I knew I had to confront whatever darkness lay ahead. I had come too far to turn back now. The old bags held more than just memories. They held the key to unraveling a mystery that had been waiting for me to discover. And I was determined to uncover the truth, no matter what horrors awaited. The silence in the archive was thick, almost oppressive, as I leaned against the closed door, my breath coming in shallow gasps. The flickering fluorescent lights cast eerie shadows that seemed to stretch and sway, mocking my fear. I was acutely aware that I was not alone. That unsettling feeling of being watched had intensified, crawling along my skin like an icy wind. I forced myself to push away from the door, heart racing, and surveyed the room. The scattered files lay like forgotten secrets, whispering of stories yet to be uncovered. I needed to regain my focus. There was too much at stake. Margaret had reached out for help, and I was the only one who had the chance to answer. With trembling hands, I began collecting the files that had fallen to the floor. Each document felt heavy with history, the weight of untold truths pressing down on me. As I pieced together the disarray, I couldn't help but feel an invisible thread connecting me to Margaret, a bond forged in the shared urgency of uncovering what lay beneath the surface. Among the disordered papers, I discovered a yellowed envelope, the seal broken. Inside, a series of handwritten notes chronicled Margaret's findings. They detailed her research into the old bags, artifacts from the town's founding families, said to hold both practical and supernatural significance. Her writing grew increasingly frantic, and it became clear she believed these bags were more than mere relics. They were vessels of something dark, something alive. I must find the origin of the bags, one note read. They were used in a ritual long forgotten. The townspeople do not speak of it. They fear it. My pulse quickened. What kind of ritual could inspire such fear? The next page held sketches of symbols, intricate designs that twisted and turned, swirling into shapes that seemed to writhe on the paper. I recognized some of them from the old stone wall I had seen in town, a place marked by time and weathered by neglect. Could this wall hold the key to unraveling the mystery? Just then, a soft, rustling sound echoed from the back of the room, slicing through my thoughts. My stomach dropped. It was too deliberate to be the wind. Gripping the flashlight, I turned slowly, my heart hammering in my chest. Shadows danced as the light flickered, revealing nothing but the rows of shelves and the oppressive silence. I edged closer to the source of the sound, each step a battle against the rising tide of panic. My mind raced with possibilities. Had I truly seen something, or was it a trick of my overactive imagination? I glanced at the door again, contemplating a quick escape, but curiosity rooted me to the spot. Then I noticed it, a faint glow seeping through the cracks of a large wooden cabinet at the far end of the room. I approached cautiously, each creak of the floorboards amplifying my anxiety. As I drew closer, the light pulsed rhythmically, casting strange patterns on the wall. Was there something inside? I reached for the cabinet's handle, hesitating as I felt a surge of foreboding. What if I opened this door and unleashed something I couldn't control? My hand trembled, but I couldn't ignore the pull of discovery. With a deep breath, I pulled the door open. A gust of stale air rushed out, carrying with it a mix of dampness and something almost sweet like decay. Inside, I found a collection of old bags, dust-covered and worn, each one a unique tapestry of history. But what caught my eye was a small, ornate box resting among them, its surface engraved with the same symbols I had seen in Margaret's notes. My pulse raced as I lifted the box from its resting place. It felt heavier than it looked, almost alive beneath my fingertips. Carefully I opened it, the hinges creaking like the whispers of the past. Inside lay a collection of items, a small dagger with a tarnished blade, a handful of dried herbs, and a leather-bound book filled with faded pages. The book was fragile, its cover worn from years of handling. I turned it carefully, revealing handwritten notes that appeared to be instructions for some kind of ritual. The language was archaic, but the meaning was clear. It spoke of invoking spirits, of binding and releasing energies tied to the land. My mind raced. Had Margaret discovered this too? Had she tried to perform the ritual? The possibility sent a chill through me. What if she had awakened something that should have remained dormant? As I delved deeper into the book, the air grew colder, the shadows thickening around me. I could feel a shift in the atmosphere, a weight bearing down as if the room itself were alive and aware of my presence. I paused, feeling the hair on the back of my neck stand on end. Then a whisper, barely audible, slithered through the air. "Alave." I froze, the word wrapping around me like a constrictor. My breath caught in my throat. It was not just a figment of my imagination. It was a command, a plea from the depths of time. I looked around, searching for the source, but the shadows only deepened, concealing any potential threat. The warning echoed in my mind, urging me to run, yet the compulsion to understand drew me deeper into the mystery. I couldn't just abandon Margaret's quest. I had to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Steeling myself, I pressed on, flipping through the pages of the book. The instructions grew more complex, detailing a connection to the old bags and their original owners, the town's founders who had believed in the power of their lineage to protect and to curse. Each name seemed to resonate with the energy of the past, echoing in my mind like a distant drum. The final page of the book sent a shiver down my spine. It described a final ritual, a culmination of all that had come before, meant to either seal or unleash the power contained within the old bags. The choice was clear. One could bind the energy or release it, risking chaos. As I contemplated the gravity of this knowledge, the feeling of being watched intensified, coalescing into a palpable force. I turned again, my heart pounding as I sensed movement in the shadows. Was it a trick of the light, or was something, or someone, waiting just beyond my sight? Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the other end of the room, shaking me from my reverie. The door I had closed was now ajar, swaying ominously as if inviting whatever darkness lay beyond. The whispers grew louder, swirling around me, echoing Margaret's final words. I had to decide, was I ready to confront the shadows of our town's past, or would I let fear dictate my next move? I took a step forward, determination surging within me. There were answers here, hidden among the dust and darkness. With the flashlight in one hand and the book in the other, I resolved to uncover the truth of the old bags, even if it meant facing the very fears that had haunted me since I first stepped into this labyrinth of history. The air was thick with tension, each breath I took laden with the weight of unspoken histories. The crash that had echoed through the archives still reverberated in my ears, urging me to act. With the flashlight beam cutting through the growing darkness, I stepped cautiously toward the partially open door. My heart raced, each beat a drum roll of dread and anticipation. As I approached the door, I could hear soft murmurs, disjointed phrases that slipped away as quickly as they came. Were they the remnants of voices long forgotten, or just the echoes of my imagination? The walls seemed to close in around me, and the once familiar space transformed into a claustrophobic labyrinth. Shadows danced along the shelves, their movements fluid and taunting. I gripped the book tighter, feeling the rough leather against my palm as I stepped over the threshold. The air shifted, growing colder as I crossed the threshold, and the whispers faded into an almost unbearable silence. It felt as if the entire archive held its breath, waiting for something to happen. The hallway beyond was dimly lit, the flickering bulbs casting long, eerie shadows that stretched toward me, as if reaching out to pull me back. The crash had come from the far end, near the staircase that led to the basement, an area I had been warned to avoid. But the allure of discovery was too strong. If Margaret had gone down there, she might have found something vital. I descended the creaky stairs, each step echoing in the stillness. The walls, lined with damp plaster and cobwebs, seemed to pulse with the energy of the past. A strange odor hung in the air, something earthy and stale, mixed with the faint scent of decay. The hair on my arms stood on end, and a shiver ran down my spine. What was down here? Reaching the bottom, I found myself in a small, dimly lit room cluttered with forgotten artifacts. Old furniture lay shrouded in dust, each piece telling a story of neglect. A heavy wooden table stood in the center, covered in strange objects, rusted tools, frayed cloth, and what appeared to be remnants of the old bags. It was as if I had stumbled into a crypt of lost memories. As I scanned the room, my eyes caught a flicker of movement near the far wall. My heart raced again. Was it just the shadows playing tricks, or was someone or something watching me? I focused on the corner where the light barely reached, and the whispers returned, more insistent this time. Find us. Set us free. I stepped forward, my pulse quickening with each cautious movement. As I neared the wall, I could make out outlines, figures obscured by darkness, almost like shadows with a will of their own. I blinked, trying to adjust my vision, but the figures remained elusive. They seemed to pulse with energy, and I could feel a weight pressing down on me, a tangible sense of urgency. Margaret, I whispered, hoping my voice would break through the fog of fear. Are you here? Silence answered me, but the shadows continued to shift and swirl, beckoning me closer. I reached for the flashlight again, shining it into the corner. To my shock, I discovered an old tapestry hanging there, its fabric worn and frayed. Intricate patterns woven into the cloth mirrored the symbols I had seen in the book, each one imbued with a history I was desperate to understand. As I brushed my fingers against the tapestry, a sharp chill shot through me, and I felt the energy surge as if the fabric were alive. The room shifted, the shadows converging around me, and I suddenly understood. This tapestry was a map of sorts, a guide to the old bags and their hidden powers. Suddenly a loud thud echoed from the staircase behind me, and I spun around, flashlight beam darting wildly as I braced for confrontation. The sound of footsteps echoed in the stairwell, deliberate and heavy. Panic surged within me. Someone was coming. I dove behind the table, heart pounding as I peered out. The footsteps grew closer, the creaking of the stairs unmistakable. I held my breath, listening intently. The door to the basement creaked open, and a shadow fell across the threshold. Margaret, a voice called, soft yet authoritative. It was a man's voice, laced with an edge of concern. "Are you down here?" My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't let him see me, not yet. I had to figure out who he was and what he wanted. As I crouched low, my mind raced. Could he be connected to Margaret's disappearance? Or was he just another innocent drawn to the darkness that lingered in this place? "Margaret," he called again, stepping into the room. The light from the staircase illuminated his features. He was tall, with dark hair and a rugged appearance that spoke of someone used to hard work and determination. His eyes scanned the room, revealing a flicker of recognition as they landed on the tapestry. Just then, I caught a glimpse of movement behind him. A shadow shifted, darkening the doorway. I instinctively ducked lower, holding my breath as the feeling of being watched intensified. "Come on, I know you're here," he urged, voice rising with urgency. "I'm not here to hurt you." In that moment, the whispers surged again, intertwining with my thoughts. "Find us. Set us free," the command echoed louder, almost drowning out his voice. I had a choice to make. I could reveal myself, confront this stranger, or I could retreat deeper into the shadows, seeking the truth hidden within the tapestry and the old bags. My mind raced with possibilities. What if he was a friend? Or worse, what if he was part of whatever had taken Margaret? As I hesitated, the tension reached a boiling point. I needed to act, and quickly. I made a split-second decision. I would reveal myself, but not before I gathered the strength and knowledge that the tapestry offered. Summoning my courage, I stood slowly, emerging from my hiding place. "Who are you?" I demanded, trying to sound braver than I felt. He turned, surprise washing over his features. "I'm here to help," he said, holding up his hands in a placating gesture. "I'm a friend of Margaret's. My name is Daniel." The tension in my shoulders eased slightly, though doubt lingered. "Where is she? What do you know about the old bags?" "I don't have all the answers," he admitted, eyes flickering with concern. "But I believe she discovered something important. Something dangerous. I need your help to find her." I hesitated, weighing his words. Could I trust him? As I glanced back at the tapestry, I felt the energy pulsate, urging me to act. "Then we need to figure out how to stop whatever is happening here," I said, resolve hardening within me. Together we would uncover the truth behind the shadows, the secrets of the old bags, and the fate of Margaret. But first, I had to confront the darkness that loomed just beyond our reach. I took a deep breath, preparing for what lay ahead, knowing that the journey would only grow more treacherous from here. The air felt electric, charged with a mix of fear and anticipation as I faced Daniel. The dim light cast elongated shadows, creating a theatrical backdrop for our unfolding drama. I searched his face for any signs of deceit, but there was a genuine urgency in his eyes, a desperate hope that ignited something within me. Margaret's disappearance is tied to these old bags, Daniel explained, taking a cautious step closer. I've been following leads that suggest they hold secrets, dark secrets. I thought I could uncover the truth on my own, but I need someone who understands the history of this place. My heart raced as I processed his words. "And you think I can help?" I asked, incredulous. The weight of the past pressed heavily on me, its burden intertwined with my growing dread. "Absolutely," he replied, voice steady. "You've already uncovered more than most. You found the tapestry, and I believe it's a key to understanding what's going on." I nodded slowly, recalling the vivid patterns and symbols woven into the fabric. Each thread seemed to whisper stories of long-forgotten lives, of secrets buried beneath layers of time. "What do you know about the bags?" I pressed, feeling the urgency of the moment. Daniel hesitated, glancing toward the staircase as if sensing a looming presence. "I don't have all the details," he admitted, his brow furrowing. "But I've pieced together fragments from historical records. They suggest that the bags were used in rituals tied to the town's darker past, sacrifices, lost souls, and..." He paused, the words hanging heavy in the air. "And there are those who still believe in their power. People willing to do anything to possess them." A chill crept down my spine. The mention of rituals and sacrifices conjured images of ancient rites, of shadows dancing in flickering firelight. It was as if the very essence of the town was alive with unspeakable horrors. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. "So what do we do next?" "We have to find the remaining bags. I believe they're hidden in various locations around town. Each one might reveal more about Margaret's fate," Daniel replied, determination radiating from him. "But we need to be careful. If there are people hunting for these bags, we're walking into a dangerous game." With a sense of purpose igniting within me, I nodded. "Let's start with the archives. There must be more records we can sift through, anything that might lead us to the bags." As we turned to leave, a strange noise echoed through the basement, a low, rumbling growl that seemed to come from the very walls. My heart raced, and I exchanged a glance with Daniel. His expression mirrored my own unease. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my voice barely audible over the pounding of my heart. Daniel nodded, tension tightening the muscles in his jaw. "We need to hurry. It's not safe here." We ascended the stairs quickly, the creaking wood beneath our feet sounding like a countdown. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the very essence of the place was urging us to turn back. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see something lurking in the shadows. As we reached the main floor, the dim light flickered ominously, casting erratic shapes against the walls. The sense of being watched returned, a prickling sensation at the back of my neck. I fought the urge to look back to see what might be trailing us. Instead, I focused on the exit, the promise of safety just beyond the door. We burst into the archive room, and I quickly made my way to the shelves filled with old books and documents. My fingers skimmed across the spines, searching for anything that might hold the key to the old bags. "There has to be something here," I muttered, pulling down a dusty tome. It was bound in faded leather, its title barely legible. Daniel was at my side, flipping through another stack of papers. "Look for any mention of rituals or the history of the bags. We need to connect the dots." As I opened the book, the pages crackled under my touch, revealing faded sketches of what appeared to be the bags themselves, intricate designs, symbols etched into the fabric, some of which mirrored those on the tapestry. My breath caught as I studied the images, the sense of familiarity washing over me. "This is it," I breathed, tracing a finger over a particular illustration. "These symbols, they're the same as those on the tapestry. They might guide us to their locations." Just then the growl erupted again, louder this time, reverberating through the archive. My heart raced as I glanced toward the door, my instincts screaming that we were not alone. "We need to get out of here now." Daniel grabbed my arm, urgency etched across his features. "Let's take the book and go. We can analyze it elsewhere." With a quick nod, I closed the book, clutching it tightly as we made our way toward the exit. The growl intensified, echoing through the hall like a warning. I could feel the shadows shifting, swirling with a life of their own, and I knew we were being hunted. As we stepped outside into the cool night air, a wave of relief washed over me. But that sense of safety was short-lived. The darkness pressed in around us, and the whispering shadows seemed to follow, twisting and turning, as if eager to ensnare us once again. "Where to now?" Daniel asked, his gaze darting around the deserted street. "We need to find a safe place to hide and study this book," I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "I have a friend who owns a cafe nearby. It's always open late. We can lay low there until we figure this out." "Good idea," he said, and we moved quickly down the street, the shadows lingering just out of reach. The cafe loomed ahead, a beacon of light in the encroaching darkness, but the feeling of dread clung to me, a reminder that whatever was hunting us was not far behind. As we reached the entrance, I hesitated, casting a wary glance over my shoulder. The night was still, but the air crackled with an impending sense of danger. Whatever secrets the old bags held, we were now entangled in their web, and there would be no escaping the past. Once inside the cafe, I felt a momentary sense of security wash over me. The warm light and comforting aroma of coffee enveloped us like a protective cocoon. I quickly found a corner table, and we settled in, the book laid open between us. "Let's figure this out," Daniel said, determination returning to his voice. As I began to study the illustrations and notes, I felt a flicker of hope amidst the dread. Maybe, just maybe, we could uncover the truth and find Margaret before it was too late. But in the back of my mind, I could still hear the whispers, the haunting echoes urging me deeper into the mysteries of the past. The night was far from over, and the shadows were closing in. You made it to the end of the stories. That means it's the perfect time to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And if you haven't already, leave a like and drop a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have a great time relaxing, and good night.